Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. And tonight I'm doing my recap of episode 4 of the Disney Plus Willow series, The Whispers of Nakmar. So, at the very end of the Battle of the Slaughtered Lamb, our heroes are licking their wounds. Unfortunately, Graydon suffered a particularly vicious attack that left him vulnerable to becoming one of the undead servants of the crone. And, well, we have to figure out somewhere to perform an exorcism, and the only place nearby is Nakmar Castle, which, for people that are familiar with the film, that was the stronghold of the evil sorceress Bavmorda. And from there, the heroes have to set up camp, but also plan out how to rid Graydon of this potentially lethal condition. Well, not just a lethal condition, but also to prevent him from becoming a monster that could do harm to Alora Dannon and the rest of the party as well. So they have to, they have like much more supernatural challenges like this episode, and it really based itself like with the setting as I'm going to use the term haunted castle. It lends itself to a lot more horror elements than I was expecting, but I was pleasantly surprised just how well it worked. So we learn more about a number of the different characters and their origins, particularly Alora Dannon. Well, I mean, if you saw the movie, you know how those events went. But also Prince Graydon. There's more to this guy, and I wonder. Okay, before I get into my like just general thoughts about the episode. So in Knockmore Castle, they have to face a number of their fears, as well as overcome said supernatural forces that threaten their quest and their lives. And there we go. At the very end of the episode, we also get our first glimpse of the immemorial city and where exactly Eric is being currently held. And those are the events of the story. Like, those are the events of the episode. Okay, now I'm just getting into my thoughts. Like I said earlier, I did like the horror elements. This seemed like anybody who's done like D&D or like a tabletop campaign in sort of like a bog, marsh, haunted castle. Very Ravenloft sort of like feel to it. I could very easily see this like, oh, by the way, this used to be the castle of an evil sorceress. Yeah, but she's not here anymore. I'm pretty sure, like, it's fine now. Like, to be fair, they don't present it in that way in the episode. But I could see the party like, okay, we have a deviation. The only places that we have to shelter are out in the open. So that's, considering that we're under constant attack from evil forces, that's not the best option. Or the castle that is probably haunted with nightmarish denizens, the likes of which we've never even conceived of before. So, vulnerability versus like difficult shelter. I mean, shelter is shelter, so I mean we still have to do that. And there I could very easily like see a number of these because like in that type of setting it lends itself well to illusions, phantoms, geists, different, just undead things. And like from this particular like setting, we also learn a lot more about the origins of Bavmorda. Bavmorda was a member of what they refer to as the Sixth. Or, particularly in Collection, she's one of the Blood of the Six. We learn greater details about the mythology of this world, about how there used to be a collection of six fays, and they went against the natural order of things, and they started up a number of different, like, forbidden practices. Particularly, Willow says taboo magic. I could easily see, because they do. There's a lot of nostalgia at play in this episode, and I can definitely see how polymorphing or transmutation, like in typical sort of like D&D sort of like School of Magic transmutation, because they did mention how in the film there's like one particular scene where you really do get a high scale of what Bavmorda is capable of when she turned the Galadorn army into pigs. Just you're all pigs, and transformed them all. And not only that, but they didn't really like touch on it, but in a lot of fantasy, weather manipulation is also high caliber magic. High caliber, high cost as well. And she did it, albeit it was in tandem with sort of like ritual magic, so you might say that it was an augmentation there. But you could also see that, she summoned the lightning. Lightning, come lightning, come thunder for the ritual of the 13th night. And just being able to utilize these abilities, in the film itself, it does show her just how powerful she really was. But we learn more about the blood of the six and the there is the crone is just the harbinger. Like it's suggested. They don't outright say that. I do like another thing I do like about this episode is that they differentiate Bavmorda from the crone. A lot of the fans have been just sort of like wondering if the crone is a euphemism for the spirit, perhaps, of Bavmorda. I think Bavmorda will still make some type of like appearance. They do mention that Jean Marsh did provide. It was the equivalent of like sound bites, like ADR, essentially. There were clips that they used in the episode. I did like it. Like they mentioned sort of like the way that they utilize. It wasn't just callback clips. Like they could have done smash cuts. Like I remember, when we were in this chamber so many years ago, and then just smash cut to the footage from the film. They mocked it up enough with effects to make it seem sort of like vapors of a bygone time, like that. I did like the visual representation of these sort of troubled memories of the castle that they showcased on a number of occasions. We saw at least the ghost of General Kale. That was okay. Like, I mean, just for pure nostalgia. I mean, like, yes, like we were kind of like expecting that as like the fans, but still, it was satisfactory to see all of these just different nightmarish elements from when Bavmorda was really in her prime, which really had that strength to her, and just the echoes of it still venture through this accursed place, and to see that worked really, really well. But anyways, getting back to it, there was some speculation that the crone was just a different nom de guerre for Bavmorda. But now we say that the crone was her initiator. She was someone who brought her into this very specific type of cabal. Cabal, organization, coven. I'm not entirely sure if they're all like women. I don't know. But we can definitely see if, considering what Bavmorda herself was capable of, and then to know that there was a power behind her that was undoubtedly even more powerful than she is or she was, that does it does give a bit of pause as to sort of see like what exactly are our heroes like facing. But not only that, so we have this very stark and grim outlook because we have a greater understanding, especially like if you didn't see the film prior, you at least have a better understanding of who Bavmorda is, who this character that they keep talking about, because she was an important character in the film. She was the primary antagonist. And sort of like now exactly like why she was the threat that she used to be. But not only that, but you can kind of like gauge where we're going here. And so you have this stark just malevolent power that is just like on the horizon. But you also have Elora Danan showcasing her strength as well. So we see that from the last episode, she does have ambient sort of, I'm going to use the term, is very general, is very umbrella, like holy magic, you know? And it does mention that she is a like a cleric empress as like one of her titles, last high priestess. So I mean, obviously she has holy magic as at her disposal. We saw that when she partially used it against the undead minions in the last episode, but here, because unfortunately the exorcism, or it was I love these types of esoteric like choices for like word choice. They use the term purgation, to purge. But purgation, like, oh yeah, it's like, okay, I like that. Well, the purgation, well, didn't really go according to plan. No one was covered in pea soup, but it still did not go well. So they needed to rely on Elora Danan to see like what could she like to do anything. Just tap into your power, try to do something. Because once again, considering like where they were at the time and how Graydon was connected to the power of the crone, or even the power behind the crone as well. We do have from episode 1 a talk about a healer of worlds. And we do have mention of a cult of the worm. So we know that even beyond Bavmorda, beyond the crone, there's something out there that's even worse. And I look forward to that. I look forward to like if it is something very grandiose. Because when I say grandiose, I mean something sort of like mysterious and unknowable and powerful in that aspect. Something almost Lovecraftian or sort of like weird horror. Or if it is simply like a more powerful magical user from possibly from another world. Possibly, I don't know, a planeswalker or something that just like really became like powerful and is like a Thanos-like character in another reality somewhere. Because that, even from the trailer, we know that there is some sort of, there's going to be some sort of like multiverse or multidimensional like happening. So just having this like Elora Danan, having her time to like literally like at a certain point like shine, and to see what she is capable of when she just falls back on her natural gifts. You know, it is also like telling, and it's hopeful. It's hopeful for the party, but it's also hopeful that, you know, like their quest is not as uphill as they may have imagined it. Another thing, so we learn more about Bavmorda. We are learning more about Elora. And once again, this episode really fills in a lot of gaps for people that didn't see the film before watching the series, which I think the series does well enough to where you don't have to watch the movie. There's enough explanation. There's a decent amount of exposition peppered throughout. This episode, not only because of its nostalgia callbacks, but it also provided a decent amount of background information if people didn't see the movie. So, but, you know, like, so I think that worked really well. Like, you know, like if you didn't know as much about Elora Danan from the film, then you picked it up in this particular episode. But you also, so like I said, we're learning about Bavmorda, we're learning about Elora, and we're also learning about Prince Graydon. So there's something there. Like when they begin their cleansing ritual, you know, they have to prepare him, and they notice very terrible, almost horrifying scarration all over his torso. And they, you know, all he says was it was just from it was from a trauma from years and years ago, but he doesn't talk about it because it's shameful. And we see in his memories that there's something worked against him when he was young. This might not have been the first time that he has been cursed. And I have a theory. So my theory is, for whatever the affliction was when he was very young, it was some sort of malediction or some sort of like curse or hex, and I think he's still carrying it around with him. Like it might be passive or dormant, but I think, based on what we've seen, I think that's why he has studied magic as intensely as he has throughout his life. Okay, why did Doctor Strange first learn magic? For those who are unfamiliar with Doctor Strange, it was to cure his hands so that he could become a surgeon again. I think Prince Graydon is probably in a similar situation to where he was afflicted with something magical, and so he looked into a number of various lores to try and rid himself of it. But is he rid of it? He said he has been through an experience like this before, and he wasn't strong enough. He was a child. He was a child, but when you see the episode and you sort of see what exactly he's referring to, is oh, I wasn't strong enough, to prevent tragedy. But I'm not entirely sure if whatever was troubling him when he was young, I'm not entirely sure if it's gone. At least not entirely. And so I'm wondering if that is going to be something that plays a bigger part in this, either in this season or hopefully the next. I hope that they do give this series more than one season. And yeah, I just there's so many possibilities moving forward that I think it would be very enjoyable. So Prince Graydon, I'm interested to see where that goes. I think that is the reason why he's so knowledgeable about other magical aspects without himself necessarily being a magician or a potential magician. Also, they also kind of put this out there that there might be some chemistry. There might be a future with Graydon and Allura. Which, to be honest, I mean, if Dad knew that, his son could marry either a princess or an empress, what has the bigger dividend potential here? Just in terms of royal lineage. Oh, okay. Hey, hey, marry up, son. Why not? So I think because he mentions how he wants to be someone who is admired and possibly even in a similar way attractive, like Eric is to Allura. So I do like that. I like the idea that they might end up. I'm not one for shipping. I'm just saying that I think that it's okay to have that on the table, and maybe aside from Willow, maybe there could be another magician. Maybe it is Graydon. Why not? He's well read on many of these principles and theories and things. So I mean, in D&D terms, he would be less of a sorcerer and more of a wizard, someone who learned magic by rote, by studying books and really practicing via script. And there's nothing wrong with that. The wild magic users, or sorcerers or sorceresses, enchanters, things like that. That's a totally different thing. And I think Allura, as that kind of natural magic user, I think she kind of falls within that realm of wild magic, because without intending to necessarily do certain things, she has something in mind. She needs to protect herself, and so she exudes more magic sometimes, and so that works against either undeads or sort of malevolent magic. Or in the case of her exorcism of Graydon, there's no ritual to it. There's no necessarily rhyme or reason to it. She just called upon her own natural abilities, just through sheer initiative, and she was able to cure him. So, But anyways, yeah. So like we're learning more about Graydon. I like the ideas that they have with the possibility of Graydon and Laura moving forward. Sort of like as a sort of like final thought, you know, we also have Kit, who is a bit more tolerable. Like she still has a way to go. Like they, so we're halfway through the show as of like right now. I've seen online that some people got like this. I haven't seen their summaries, but some people who got screeners got the entire season. Whereas like, you know, like for the rest of us, we have to just sort of like wait and watch week by week, which I don't mind. But it is like sort of like, like where are we in compared to the rest of the season? I don't know. But for Kit now to sort of like realize, okay, I'm not the center of the universe. I'm not the most important person. I'm not the strongest and the smartest and the most powerful. Like I think these last two episodes, episodes 4 and 3, respectively, have shown her. They've been humbling for her, and I think that's a very good thing. She was much more tolerable this episode versus where we have been with her for the beginning of the series. So hey, progress is progress. Even just a little bit more tolerable, I'll take it. And not only that, but we see that she's willing to be a team player here. So I appreciate that. You know, we had this really low bar set for her from the outset. She's very like privileged, very bratty, obnoxious, overbearing, spoiled, and it's kind of been fading. Like those negative traits, those negative aspects have been kind of like ironed out, you know, and we can kind of see like, okay, there's a mission that we have in mind, and that is it's to save the prince, but it's also to, you know, make sure that Elora Danan is capable of fighting the crone and turning back her minions. So like I think now that Kit has a proper perspective of things, I don't expect her to be a flawless character by the end of the season, but it's a step in the right direction. A little means a lot. All right. So there we have it. So that's my recap, and those are like my thoughts on episode 4 of the Willow series. I'm sticking with it. I like it, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of episodes. So we'll just like see how this moves forward. But thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.